Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second leadership session at the Minnesota GIS LIS Consortium Conference 2021. I'm Ali Hosseini, the moderator for this session, and please send your messages in Q&A chat box in the Zoom meeting. Today, this session is about the path from GIS Manager to GIS Leader, and we have Adam Carnow from Esri. And now I hand it over to Adam to start the session.
Great, thanks a lot, Ali. And let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, hopefully everybody can see my screen. Very happy to be here and participate in this great event and support the great community up in Minnesota. I certainly wish there wasn't a pandemic going on so we could all get together in person. I really love Minnesota, and I would love to get back up there and meet all of you folks. I'm coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a community evangelist for Esri, and I'm here to talk to you about the path from GIS Manager to GIS Leader. There's a lot of information in these slides. I'll be providing the slides digitally to the folks running the conference so they can share them out to you, and they'll be able to, you'll be able to click on them and access their hyperlinks to additional information. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to shut my camera off so that you can focus on the slides and not me. So let me stop my video. Okay. So we are here to talk to you about the path from GIS Manager to GIS Leader. And let's first talk about why we need GIS leaders. Well, about 10 years ago, I ran across this article online, and it had this quote in it that really kind of opened my eyes. And it said that generally people outside of GIS think of GIS just as maps or a graphic product or the younger brother of CAD. And it really kind of made me angry, but because I knew that it was mostly true. And I think one of the main reasons why most organizations that have GIS are underutilizing it is because most people who are not GIS users hear the term GIS and they think MAP, those are the map makers. And while map making is a very valuable skill and hard to do really, really well, and maps are valuable, you've got access to GIS and analytics and data and enterprise GIS, you should be doing a whole lot more than maps. And so I think the reason why we're not put up or allowed to, or have the availability to move into leadership roles is because people don't understand the true value that we can provide the organization. And this also was shown in another article about 6 years ago. That said GIS is often seen as maps or visual graphics products. The more advanced capabilities are ignored because they remain unknown to key departments and decision makers. Again, awareness of your colleagues as to what the GIS can really do to help them is the issue that we're dealing with. And then 3 years ago, there was this article that came out, which was a survey of CIOs and other executives about what's the biggest challenge as to why they're not realizing the maximum return on investment for their GIS. And it said lack of awareness among users and policymakers remains the biggest challenge for the industry. So we're facing an image problem and an awareness problem. And in that same article, the CEO for Here Technologies had this great quote. He said, "The geospatial industry is still undervalued and underappreciated by the world at large. And the onus is on us to collectively demonstrate how location data and tools can be applied to make dramatic improvements to society, from making every journey safer and our air cleaner to helping businesses operate more efficiently." So he's totally right. So we have got to maybe get our heads out of our maps and start getting out there and changing our colleagues' minds about what GIS can do and how it can help them in their work. So the way I like to say it is your colleagues need your help and want your help, they just don't know it. So now let's shift from that topic to winning with location intelligence. And really, this is what it's all about. So most executives aren't really interested too much in technology. And so it's important for us, if we're going to get through to them and get them to understand the value that GIS can provide the organization so that we can become leaders, we need to shift our focus away from the technology and onto the capability. So a capability is the power or ability to do something. And executives are very interested in capabilities. They want to add new capabilities to the organization. They want their staff to gain new capabilities and expand existing capabilities. So if you shift this conversation away from the technology over to capability, you'll start, I think, to get them to understand the value that we can bring to the organization a lot more. And so the capability, the best term that I found that GIS can enable a capability in an organization is location intelligence. And so I think we need to start to frame what we do in the phrase of location intelligence. If you want help getting an executive to understand what location intelligence is, Esri produced this video along with Fast Company. It's available at this URL, and it's a short video. It's only about 2 minutes long, and it is designed to be seen by an executive, and it will get them to understand the definition of location intelligence and the value of it. So I think it's important that we start to focus on quit implementing just technology, and let's implement the location intelligence capability across our organization. And so one of the resources that's really valuable in helping you do this is this report from Esri Canada that came out a couple of years ago. And it's called Winning with Location Intelligence, the Essential Practices. And it's basically best practices for implementing location intelligence in an organization. So they surveyed 200 different organizations across Canada, across all industries. These were large organizations. They had 500 or more employees. And then they analyzed their use of location intelligence and identified common best practices among the ones that were most successful at doing so. And so what is important to understand here is that if you're going to shift from implementing technology like GIS to implementing a capability like location intelligence, it requires an entire different set of skills and knowledge. And so what I want to do is let you know that if you want to become a leader, you've got to focus on implementing location intelligence, which means you're going to have to spend time doing other things and expanding your knowledge in other areas. And the categories of these areas come again from this Esri Canada report into what they call the 5 pillars of location intelligence. And they are strategy, organization, technology and data, culture, and literacy. So what this shows us is if you're going to be successful implementing location intelligence, you've got to spend time in all 5 of these areas. You've got to have skills in all 5 of these areas. You cannot spend 100% of your time in technology and data, which is what I find most GIS professionals doing. So what I'm going to do is go a little bit into each one of these 5 pillars. And as I move through each one of them, I'm going to highlight a special number. And these 5 numbers up here correspond to the 5 pillars. They are 64, 76, 78, 84, and 84. So you'll see what these numbers mean as we move through. But let's talk about that first pillar, which is strategy. And bottom line is, if you're going to be successful with GIS in your organization and with location intelligence, you must have a strategy. No ifs, ands, or buts. The importance of a strategy cannot be understated. In fact, in a September 2019 survey from McKinsey & Company on how leaders in data and analytics have pulled ahead, they found that the creation of a strategy now ranks as the #1 challenge to and the reason for a company's success at data and analytics. So GIS is data and analytics. And so what this survey showed is that if you are successful with data and analytics, the #1 reason why you are is because of your strategy. If you're not successful, the #1 challenge to being successful is a strategy. So you must have a strategy. And I'm not talking about a strategic plan, a big thick document that sits on the shelf, maybe gets updated every 3 to 5 years. I'm talking about a day-to-day business-focused strategy on how to run your organization to provide the biggest impact it can. And if you need to create a new strategy, you're probably going to need some resources. You need to get approval from executives. And so I would steer you towards this great article from Matt Lewin at Esri Canada that will give you 5 different ways or reasons why you can tell an executive about why it's critical that you have a geospatial strategy. So go ahead and use these reasons, and you can work with your Esri account team to help you as well. But it's critical that you have a strategy. And so We're going to come to the first of the 5 numbers that I mentioned, and that is that 64% of organizations that use GIS do not have and maintain a GIS strategic plan. This number comes from research that I did for 2 years. I traveled across the country and presented an interactive survey presentation for GIS professionals. I surveyed over 800 GIS professionals in states in the Department or the District of Columbia, and collated this information, and it showed me that 64% of organizations that use GIS don't have and maintain a GIS strategic plan. So this is a big problem because it's one of the #1 ways to be successful with GIS and location intelligence. So what do I mean by geospatial strategy? Again, this is a business-oriented plan. It's not technology-oriented, and it defines how an organization is going to use GIS to achieve its goals. And an effective geospatial strategy connects the business needs with the right people, processes, and technology to help you overcome challenges and improve results. So it's all about the business, and it's all about the business, making the business more effective. That should be your daily focus in everything you do. So another way to look at this is in these 4 circles. So a geospatial strategy, to start out with, you need to understand your business's goals. So most businesses have strategic plans. They have goals, objectives, policies. Maybe they have some key performance indicators. Maybe they have some initiatives. Whatever it is, every organization has some goals. You need to be very familiar with those goals. You need to read and understand those goals. And then the next thing you need to do is figure out who in the organization is in charge of meeting those goals. And then you go talk to them and you say, what are the challenges that you're experiencing that are not letting you meet your goals? And in the guise of helping them, they should be very happy to tell you what things are in the way that are not allowing them to meet their goals. And then what you can do is take that information back, go and brainstorm and figure out how GIS can help mitigate those challenges and allow them to meet their goals. Then you would come back and you would propose a GIS solution or multiple ones that will help them mitigate those challenges and meet their goals. And if you get their support and actually implement those successfully, ta-da, you get business value of GIS. Your work is completely aligned with the things that the people at the top believe are important. The organization will meet more of its goals. You will be successful. You will get increased resources, etc. So this is the entire idea of a strategy. And let's look at what happens in real life when you can do this really well. So I have a great example here from Bonneville County, Idaho. It's a county that's in the southeast part of Idaho. Their population is about 115,000. And back in 2015, they had a single GIS professional. And she knew that the county quite often every year gets hit with wildfires. And the county's response to that was primarily driven by manual paper-based workflows that were really in need of an update and modernization. So she came to Esri and implemented some commercial off-the-shelf configurable solutions to help wildfire response. And then sure enough, they did get hit by wildfires. And their response was totally redefined. And they got much better response to the fires. And the end users experienced a whole new level of accomplishment towards fighting these fires because of the digital tools and getting rid of the manual paper-based workflows. So this, along with some other high-end value applications that she deployed, convinced the people at the top to hire 5 more full-time GIS staff. So that's an amazing story because we all know how hard it is to get a brand new full-time employee approved by executives. But it just shows you that even in a county of a moderate size of 115,000 people, that if you show them value, they will find the resources and take your GIS staff from 1 to 6. So that's just a great example of what you can do with a good strategy that aligns, again, with things that are important to the people at the top. And Esri's worked with organizations across the globe for decades, and this is our best practice for a geospatial strategy. It's 4 phases. You understand the goals and the challenges. You plan the GIS solutions to mitigate those challenges. You then act by implementing them, and then you revisit the goals and challenges again because they're constantly changing because things happen like wildfires and pandemics and economic slowdowns, et cetera. So if you want to learn more about the Esri's approach to geospatial strategy, you can go to this URL and download this paper, The Approach to Maximize Impact. It's a short document, and it will introduce you to the geospatial strategy concept and our best practice around it. And if you're interested in creating one for your organization, reach out to your Esri account team and they can help you with that. Okay, so the next of the 5 pillars is organization. And organization is a broad category. So I want to focus in on one part of it, and that's the second bullet underneath organization, which talks about a governance framework. So I want to talk about governance, and in this context, I'm not talking about data governance or technology governance. I'm talking about organizational governance. So what is the structure? What is the formal structure that dictates in your organization how GIS functions, how geospatial technology decisions are made? Is there a steering committee? Who reports to who? All that kind of stuff. What's the funding mechanism? All of that. Having formal GIS governance is another critical piece of being successful with GIS and location intelligence. And so again, let's go to my research, which showed that 76% of organizations that use GIS do not have formal governance in place. This is, again, another huge hurdle to being fully successful with enterprise GIS. Along with strategy, you've got to have governance. If you want some resources on governance, I would steer you to the writings of Matt Lewin from Esri Canada. He's one of the biggest fountains of knowledge about GIS governance that I've seen. He's published a lot of it on the web. So again, if you don't have governance, you should reach out to your Esri account team and get some assistance in creating some. Then third of the 5 pillars is technology and data. This is where we're most comfortable and we spend the majority of our time. And what I'd like to focus on in this pillar is best practices. So best practices are called that for a reason. They are the best way to implement GIS in an organization to make it as effective and performant as it can be. Too many of our customers at Esri aren't aware of our best practices and don't implement them. And that's a real problem, because I promise you, if you were to implement the best practices that apply to your organization, your GIS will be much more performant. You'll have fewer calls to tech support, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I found in my research is that 78% of GIS practitioners have not read our best practices document, which is called Architecting the ArcGIS System. So that's a huge problem, because they don't even know what our best practices are. So this is that document, and this is the URL where you can go find this document. You need to download this document and read it thoroughly and go through it with your Esri account team. Figure out which of these best practices apply to your organization, and then implement them. Make a plan to implement them. Be aware that this document changes at least 3 times a year. So you need to always be checking, every couple of months to see if there's a new version out. The latest version is from August 2021. So please be aware of this. Make yourself familiar. A lot of these best practices don't come from Esri. They are IT best practices. And so if you talk to your IT directors, they should be familiar with a lot of these and probably have assumed that you've already implemented them. So you should get their support in implementing a bunch of these. So anyway, those are the best practices. On to the next pillar, which is culture. And culture, again, is a large, broad category. I'd like to focus on one part of culture, and that is change management. And here I'm talking about organizational change management. I'm not talking about software change management. And the part of change management that I mean here is that, we spend a lot of time getting our technology ready for the organization. You need to help the organization get ready for the technology, because you can deploy the best app in the world, but if nobody actually uses it, you're not seeing any value to it. And by default, human beings are averse to change. And so they're usually reluctant to pick up new technology. And so what we really need to do, the way to make them more likely to use new technology and to adopt it, is via an organizational change management program. And my research shows that 84% of organizations that use GIS don't have and maintain a change management plan or program. And by change management, the reason we're talking about this is that the biggest challenge of a successful GIS implementation is the people problem. The technology is actually the easy part. So the solution is to implement the change management program. And the definition I'm going to use for change management is from ProSci, which is one of the industry's experts on it, and that is the discipline that guides how we prepare, equip, and support individuals to successfully adopt change in order to drive organizational success and outcomes. And their research shows that those organizations that have organizational change management programs experience an increase in technology adoption by 6 times those organizations that don't. So if your organization does have a change management program, get involved with it. If they don't, you're going to want to start up your own. I do want to let you know that Esri does have a change management consulting team. Michael Green is part of that team, and he and his team have published a lot of resources out there about it. So if you want more help with change management, again, reach out to your Esri account team, and we can help you with that. Okay, so the last of the 5 pillars is literacy. Again, a broad category. What I'd like to focus on here is workforce development, which is training. GIS technology is accelerating so fast. Everybody that uses GIS in one form or another in your organization should be getting some training every year. And I know that it's hard to get training budgeted. It's hard to get budget for training. So a great way to do that is creating a workforce development plan, which looks at the roles and responsibilities of the staff in your organization, the access they have to GIS, and how they would utilize GIS to accomplish their mission, and then would prescribe specific training based on those needs in a certain order. So you have a pathway, a series of courses for each person in your organization so that they could actually have the skills they need to take advantage of this great resource. And that's very much more likely to get you some budget for training than just asking for some money for training. To have an actual plan that you can show an executive that says, here's what's recommended, so our people can actually use the tools we're providing to them, it would really help. And so my research shows that 84% of organizations that use GIS do not have and maintain a workforce development plan. So be aware that Esri has some learning plans or workforce development plans online, some generic ones. So let's say, for instance, you want to migrate all of your desktop users off of ArcMap and onto ArcGIS Pro. You can go up here and find a learning plan that will do that. If you want to create a custom workforce development plan for your organization, you can reach out to your Esri account team. You have access to an Esri training consultant that is available to you at no cost, and they will help develop a workforce development plan. Okay, so that's the end of the 5 pillars and some resources around each one of them, as well as some indicators as to how bad our community really needs to work in these other 4 areas beyond the technology and data. But what I'd like to do now is review some GIS leadership examples of people who have gone from manager to leader. And the first thing I want to talk about is that job titles matter and that there's some alternatives out there. So because we have this image, when people hear GIS of map makers, I'm seeing a lot of people, in order to shake that image and become leaders, they're rebranding themselves, their job titles, and their departments using new terminology that drops GIS from it. And that makes sense, because GIS is a tool we use. It's not what we do. You don't see a spreadsheet department in your organization. Why do we have a GIS department? So here are some actual real world examples of GIS departments that are rebranded out there. And the vision here to become a leader for me is that, every organization has a CEO, a chief executive officer. And over time, as technology has become more important, CEOs created executive positions to drive the strategic use of technology in the organization. That's usually something like a chief technology officer. But then as technology has grown and become more complex and more valuable and more important to the organization, they've created additional executives. So you're starting to see chief innovation officers, chief data officers, and chief analytics officers. So I think that if we could convince executives of the value that geospatial technology can have in an organization, why shouldn't we have a chief geospatial officer? And then you could move up into that and beyond the GIS manager, and then strategically drive the use of geospatial technology throughout the organization at an executive level. And look at our community, at your peers. There are many examples of GIS managers that have moved up into leadership positions. Here's some examples from all over the world. You'll see CIOs and CDOs and directors and all kinds of interesting things. Again, you'll see a lot of rebranding, dropping of GIS. So reach out to these folks. You can probably find all of them on LinkedIn, You know, we have a friendly community of GIS users out there. They're probably more than willing to get to know you and help you understand, give you some pointers on how they moved up that might be able to help you do the same. I'd like to highlight a few. One is Todd Shanley. He works right up the road from me here in Charlotte. He's in Cabarrus County. Todd's been at the county for over 20 years. He actually started as GIS intern, and now he's CIO, and he's won awards. And Cabarrus County is one of the best counties IT groups in the country. They're consistently in the top 10 of digital counties every year for the past, I think, over 9 years. So he's doing a great job up at Cabarrus County. Nick O'Day, he's the Chief Data Officer at the City of Johns Creek, Georgia. He was formerly the GIS Manager. And then Tracy McKee, she is the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of Charleston, South Carolina. She was formerly the GIS Manager. And then there's more other ways to become more important and to become a leader in your organization. You don't have to move up into a fancy title. Here's an example of 4 local government organizations where the executives have realized the power and value of GIS, and so they've reorged where GIS is, and so the person that leads GIS for that organization actually reports directly to an executive. And so this shows that an executive really sees the value in GIS by reorganizing it to report directly to them. So this is just another way to make yourself more important and move into a leadership role without necessarily taking on a new title. All right, so now let's get to the conclusion. The 5 pillars of location intelligence is what it's all about. We have got to gain knowledge and skill in these other 4 pillars. We can't spend 100% of our time in technology and data. We have got to shift the conversation away from technology and over to capability. We have to start talking about location intelligence and quit talking about technology. So we need to learn, we need to have a strategy. We need to have governance and work on other parts of the organization under technology and data. We've got to learn what the best practices are, and then we've got to implement those and keep them up to date for those that apply to our organization. We need to work on the culture. We need to make sure that we've got change management in place, getting the organization ready for the technology, making sure that the technology is being adopted. And we need to work on literacy. And part of that is workforce development, having a workforce development plan, getting training budgeted and in place, and having, again, some training for everybody that uses GIS every year. The return on investment for training can be shown. Those organizations that get more training, have fewer tech support calls, do see a higher return on investment. So this is your plan. You need to work on all 5 pillars of location intelligence. And if you do, you will rise from manager to leader, because that's what leaders do, especially in times like now with the pandemic. Leaders step up and say, you know, I'm going to help us emerge on the other side of this pandemic as an even better organization than before. That's what people at the top are looking for, people to stand up and volunteer to really help change the organization. And really, that's the core as to what we as GIS professionals should be doing. We should be changing the organization for the better through the use of technology. That's the core as to what we should be doing. And so all the best GIS shops that I've seen across the country, they all get help. Nobody knows it all and can do it all. So please get help from Esri and our partners. As far as Esri is concerned, you should be aware of your account team. You should know the account manager and the solution engineer. In addition to that, we have a whole slew of subject matter experts that can help you as you talk to others in your organization. We have subject matter experts in every industry, whether it be law enforcement or planning or economic development, public works, you name it. So that when you go to talk to one of those leaders, if they don't understand GIS and you don't speak their language, we can bring in a subject matter expert that can bridge that gap and talk to them about the value to their business, and can talk about some other success stories for similar organizations that are implementing the technology in that industry. We have a very good services group. You can engage them in multiple ways. And here's where you get to your training consultant, again, for that workforce development plan at no cost to you. Here's where you can get access to the change management team. Again, we've got award-winning technical support. You can also pay some extra and get some premium support that gives you 24/7, 365 support. That's really critical if you have users that work around the clock. And then we have an advantage program that gives you access to everything, the consulting services, the training consultant, the change management, and the tech support, all in a program where you have a technical advisor with an annual work plan that will really help you move the needle really fast. So check into that. We also have a slew of great Esri partners. And be aware that our partners can earn specialties. So if you need help in a certain area that we have a specialty for, make sure you find a partner that has earned that specialty, because they'll already be very knowledgeable about what you need to do. And talk to your Esri account team to help you select the best partner. And then visit the RTS marketplace, because that's where our partners show off their skills and services. All right, let's talk about some other resources for you. Here's a really great book from Matt Lewin up at Esri Canada, all about geospatial strategy essentials for managers. This is all about the business, culture, people, strategy side of GIS. This is where real GIS success is made. Again, the technology is the easy part. So definitely download this free ebook and check it out. Matt's just one of the finest minds in our community. You should really soak up everything that he puts out there. If you work in the public sector and you're looking for a way or some help in educating your executives on the value of GIS, this Smarter Government website and book companion work really well. It's put together by Martin O'Malley, who is the governor of Maryland and the mayor of Baltimore. And the book is written for an executive. So if you're looking for presents for your executives, buy them some copies of Smarter Government and give it to them. It's meant to be read by them, and it gives great examples, real world examples and best practices for how to use technology, especially geospatial technology, to run a local government organization much smarter. If you're looking for more results, there's a similar website called Data Smart City Solutions. This comes to us from Harvard. It's run by Stephen Goldsmith, who was a vice mayor at New York City, and in other he's in other executives and other local government organizations across the United States. And it's got great best practices, case studies, podcasts, videos, you name it. They're always putting new stuff out about how technology can really help government organizations be smarter. And then if you're looking for the information that you've seen in this presentation, you want to look at it in a different form. I took this presentation and converted it into a series of 3 blog posts on LinkedIn. If you find me on LinkedIn in my profile, you'll see a link to part 1. At the end of part 1 is a link to part 2, and at the end of part 2 is a link to part 3. And it's got everything you've seen in this presentation, along with hyperlinks to the other resources I've talked about. So if you want to consume it there, you can go ahead and check that out. And then I just want to alert you to some really great people to follow that will have more content like this business management strategic part of GIS. And there are Nathan Hazelwood, Matt Lewin, and Paul Synott. Nathan's out of New Zealand. I mentioned Matt multiple times already. He's out of Esri Canada. And then Paul Synott is out of Esri Ireland. These guys are some of the most brightest minds in the GIS industry around this strategic business part of GIS. So definitely follow them they're all on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Connect with them and learn from them. Okay, so now it's up to you. It's time to seize the opportunities in front of you. There's a huge amount of opportunity right now. What with the pandemic going on, organizations need to save money. They need to get rid of manual paper-based workflows. They need to digitally transform, and GIS can help with all of those, and the executives need to know that. And actually, IT budgets go up in times like this when budgets are getting cut. Their IT spending will go up. So don't be afraid to ask for more money in times like this. If you're going to really provide value, like you saw that Bonneville County, Idaho did, they'll be happy to invest in that as long as you can prove the value. All right, so the last few things here, the difference between having a job and building a career. Think about which one you want to do. If you want to just go do your job and then retire at the end of your career, that's fine. But if you really want to build a career and move up and have more successful professional development and professional satisfaction, you will work on trying to be a leader and helping your organization change for the better. And when you're gone from this job, think about how people will remember you. Did you do your job well, or did you actually help transform the organization and become a leader and make it perform better? My last thought for you is, I am a community evangelist at Esri, so I need to inspire you. And That is that I don't want this just to be another presentation that you sit through. I want this to be a watershed moment that changes your daily work. I want you to take this inspiration from what you've seen in this presentation and take these resources and step up and become a leader in your organization and use the technology to solve real problems so that your organization can accomplish their goals and make our communities better places. It really is possible. You saw the example at Bonneville County. There's people listed as the leaders that are moving up. They've all done it as well. So reach out to them and let them help you understand how you can do it. Lastly, here's how to get in touch with me. My email, I'm active on the Esri community. You can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to help customers, help you understand the hurdles you're dealing with and help you come up with some strategies on how to mitigate them. And then I also want to hear about your successes so that I can share your success stories with others. So with that, that's all I've got. I'm going to turn my video back on and I'd be happy to take any questions. I think I see a couple in the Q&A box. I see, please put the URL in the chat. And is my presentation available online? Yeah. So as you saw, my presentation is available as a series of blog posts on LinkedIn. There's also a video version of it up there as well. I will provide these slides in a digital form to the conference folks, and hopefully they can make it available to everybody. If not, just drop me an email at acarnow@esri.com, and I'd be happy to send you the slides as well. So those were questions from Randy. Anybody else have any other questions? Comments? Anything? I don't see anything. Okay, then I'm going to stop my share. And I will hand it back over to Ali. Ali, is there anything else we need to cover?
Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you for the great presentation and leadership session. And thank you everybody for attending this session in this year's conference. If there's no more question, we can finish the session here.
Great, thanks a lot, Ali. And then thanks again for the opportunity to support the community in the event, and enjoy the rest of the conference, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.